My name is Andres Alvarez. It is now May 2024. A little bit about my background. I was born in the Dominican Republic, and I have always been interested in art since I was a little kid, or just making art. I don't think you have a concept of what art is. When you're a child, you just do things that make you feel good. I think my parents saw that, and I was always drawing and coloring things. And very early on, they put me, I believe it was a Saturday art class, like a studio art class, that was given to kids of like low income, I guess, because as I found out later on, the teacher who was doing it for donations, like monthly donations to whomever could give him something. And I didn't come from an affluent family, so he wasn't getting a lot. But it was good. I believe that even though I couldn't say I learned how to paint, I learned how to do pottery. Even though I don't think I became good at those things, it did expose me to creating things with your hands and feeling comfortable with it, expressing artistically what's in your head. I think that had a great impact because it happened so early in my life. I think it was a very important thing for me to go through. And I believe it just made art making a constant throughout my life. I didn't really have it or place it as a centerpiece in my life goals, I guess, or when it came to what I wanted to do for a living. Because coming from a family with some limited resources, you have to consider what's going to pay the bills, not so much about, what you could do for fun until it pays the bills. That was a concept that's very like foreign to my way of thinking and those around me. But I always did pay attention to art. I always did something creative in my high school years. I attended high school in Puerto Rico. I lived there for a while. And I feel that at that time, that is when my art making became something of social value to me, because it connected me to strangers, it connected me to my friends, and it helped a lot in a high school environment because you're known for something. People see some value on something that you do on your own that you enjoy, and you get a bit of recognition for that. And I think that type of validation also gave me a lot of confidence on what I was able to do by just playing around with art and drawing whatever I wanted to draw. So that also helped. After high school, I think that things got a little bit more complicated, I guess, because now you really have to figure out how to get a job and really figure out how you're going to make a living, especially when, at least back then, there were not many creative career paths available to me at the moment. And honestly, I just never considered art making as something that you could do for a living. It wasn't really it wasn't something that I really considered. So I kind of like went into graphic design, and around that time, I was given the opportunity to make a move and come to New York City, which is where I currently live. I've been living here for 20 plus years. And I was doing, working on whatever I could, retail and whatnot. And even though I never neglected doing something, being connected to art and drawing and staying somewhat active with that, it was still not something that I had the courage to put as a centerpiece of my like life dreams and goals. It was something that I was doing on the side while I was taking care of my perceived responsibilities at the time. I believe it wasn't until maybe 2012, 2013 that something in my head clicked, and I just wanted to focus on learning how to make art, how to not I don't think you can. How can I put this? I wanted to be good enough to paint. I wanted to be good enough to draw in order to be considered a legitimate artist. Somehow, I don't know if it matters. That somehow I just became focused on learning the technical skill that I thought I needed to be taken serious as an artist, if that even makes sense. So from 2013 until now, I have been doing that. I taught myself or learned on my own how to paint with oils, with watercolors and whatnot. And now I'm really focusing on oil painting. I consider everything that was a long background introduction, but I consider myself someone with a late start in art, I will say, because even though I always had it on my radar and it was something always that I paid attention to, I always felt that, or I realized that I didn't pay enough attention to it until recently. So I feel like I had a late start. I started really paying attention to it and learning technical skills and exploring different mediums in my late 30s. I'm 46 now. So yeah, anything before my mid 30s, I would consider my background when it comes to art, because it took that long for me to realize its value, or the value it added to my life, to my personal life and my personal development. Not only as an artist but as a person. Now, how does that background affect or influence what I'm doing now? I think it's everything. I think at some point I realized that I was paying attention to the wrong aspects of my life. I was paying attention to the wrong aspects of life itself, which was mainly maybe the negative, when I could have been giving more value to the positive, which is the positives are always there. It depends on how you look at life as a whole, especially if you compare where you come from and you look at the progress you've made. Yeah, everything influenced what I'm doing now, because I really, especially in the past maybe year and a half, couple of years, I feel like I have finally have tapped into a sense of identity within my work. I feel like before I was exploring. I was always have this sense that I was catching up, that I was looking for some type of external validation. I wanted to somehow prove to imaginary people in my head that I could do this and I could do that. I could paint this way and I could paint that way. And I could like paint like the old masters, even though I never, obviously never, you can only teach yourself so much. But I strive to that. I always had this nagging thought in my head that I had something to prove as an artist. And actually I made the biggest development or biggest chunk of growth as an artist is when I realized that doesn't have to be the case. You just do. You just express what comes to your head. You just put things on the canvas and you follow that flow. And see where it takes you. I don't know if life itself influenced the work that I'm doing now, which is a very like surreal, bordering abstract concepts that I put together. I did realize when I started painting or letting loose with the things that I'm doing now is that if I backtrack through my previous explorations, I feel like it's not I feel, I know that it's not the first time I tapped into the aesthetics of what I'm doing now. I was always catching something that was nothing, but to me it was visually pleasing and I was playful. But since it wasn't anything specific and I couldn't actually like define it, I always kept it in limited to sketchbooks and this and that. The were I can consider throwaways, maybe. Which is why I think that when I started diving in and kind of stepping away from representational art, portraits and whatnot, when I started diving into these abstract concepts, they didn't quite feel new to me. It didn't feel like I started something new. It was like I found the right focus for something that was already tapping me on the shoulder and telling me, look this way. This is where it's at. So the more I do it, the more I explore, the more I experiment within this work. So it's gonna sound strange, but it feels like I'm closer to home. I don't socialize much. I don't go out much. But given the choice of going to most like social gatherings and whatnot, I usually prefer to dive into these abstract spaces and see what's in there. I want to like travel there and see where it takes me. The less planning, the better. My current series is called Random Access Memory. The title for this series, obviously, it's a computer reference, RAM, computer memory. I think it came about because when I started doing this work, there was a lot of talk in the air about AI and artworks being copied or stolen by AI programs and whatnot. And I think AI's goal is to replicate the human brain power. And the human brain power and thought ability relies a lot on memory. Like memory is everything for a thought process. It informs the way we think, it informs our decision making. Everything relies on memory, things you remember and things that you know through experience. But we put everything out of our brains, our memory space, and that includes our decisions when it comes to maybe art making and anything in general. So so instead of copying lifelike objects using references, I decided to not use references for any of my work and just grab everything from my own memory. Use human intelligence instead of referencing pre-recorded items or animals and whatnot. And I have my own brain pushes back against this concept because sometimes I see myself catching a nice photo, especially nature, aquatic, sea photos, animals, things in nature that are really, really beautiful and really inspiring because of the color constructs, the textures. And I immediately tell myself I have to put that in a painting. But then when I try to grab that reference and implement it into the way I lay out a painting before I start it, I see myself getting hung up too much on this reference, on getting hung up on copying nature, getting hung up on what things are supposed to look like, quote unquote, which is a bit of the opposite of what I aim to do. I don't want to do literal copies of things. I want to grab those things off of the ether and just spill it onto my canvas, wherever they come from. And that usually works and it feels more rewarding. I don't think I create these things. I don't think anybody creates anything. I believe that the things that we put on canvas or put out as artists come from the ether, however you want to call it. You can call it God, you can call it the universe. But we are a channel for these things. We didn't come up with them. They popped into our heads. I really believe that is our quote unquote creative process. We're just channeling things that's come through our heads and we do our best to make them, translate them into the physical world. That is the way I see this work. I try not to question it. I just follow this flow. If something doesn't make sense within it, I just trust it and believe that it'll work out at the end. And at some point, I will look at it, step back, and I will feel that it's done. And then I will know it's done, and I will trust that and move on. The best I can do is get familiar and comfortable with the tools that I'm using and as present as possible while I'm doing it so the message comes across as clear as possible. It is not something that I'm just doing like a robot, just automated. I believe that and I don't consider that anything that I'm doing is special in the sense that it is unique to me. I think that we all have access to these realms. I think this is something that's out there and we can tap into if we open ourselves to those possibilities. Because it is very easy to get distracted and not pay attention to anything at all and completely miss out, even if you had it in front of you. So I'm doing my best not to miss out, paint it, look at it, and keep walking. I don't know if what or who I would consider my influences. I think that any artist, either known, unknown, famous, old, new, that I came across in my process of learning anything at all was an influence into what I'm doing now. I enjoyed doing portraits for quite a while. So I was really into old painters like Sargent and Rembrandt, Diego Velázquez, and names like that, those fancy names on history books. But I could not say that what they did it directly influences my work. They all, and I could throw in Frank Frazetta and people like Simon Beasley, which are not like people that you're going to find in a fine arts conversation, though they should. But what I'm trying to say is that this artist's work show me that you can tap into something that is bigger than you. You can tap into something that is almost unexplainable when you look at it. But once you do it, you start to like get a grasp of what's possible or what's out there. You can start getting these flashes of other things that you haven't done yet. Because now you're tuned in. You're tuned into that frequency that you've been missing out on. And once again, I think everybody has access to this stuff if they want to, if they find a way to be present and witness life itself. I will say also that maybe I can say that maybe Salvador Dali was a big influence on what I'm doing now that I think of it. Because I always, not always, but there was a point where I wanted to express what was in my head. Like, how can I put on a canvas something that abstract concepts that I'm thinking about? How can I do that? So, and Dali and all the painters in his movement, because it wasn't just him, they all managed to, against all societal standards, decided to paint these abstract thoughts, like psychological things, dreams that they had, bunch of weird stuff, just putting it out there. And you can see their paintings. You can see Dali's painting. You can almost see, if you're fortunate enough to see various Dali's paintings side to side in person, you can almost see like a train of thought. Like, this is the mind of a person in action. You know? These things were going on in somebody's head. They could paint anything else that may actually make sense to other people. They decided to go with this and paint these dreams that they had and this thought that popped into their heads. I would say that was influential in me trying to learn how to depict what wasn't there. And there's no, like, you cannot put it in a box. You can only look at it and take it in and see if you find a connection in there, or if that little door to the source opens up and you really connect to it, regardless of what I see as an artist, of the person who put it together, regardless of what my plan was, regardless of what the original sketch was. Regardless of all of that, the way the viewer interprets it is completely is an individual experience that is also part of a collective consciousness. And that's the best way I can describe that. I don't think that there is a general answer to what the biggest challenge is to being an artist. I think that's an individual thing. In my case, I think that the biggest challenge is finding that balance of supporting yourself, having a job, or generating income from not from your work, and still be able to manage your time and energy and focus to create or to produce work, to put in the studio time. That is one of the biggest challenges. Add to that the non-art making aspects of trying to support yourself as an artist, which is market yourself, put yourself out there, do the legwork. So that is to me, that is the one of the most challenging aspects of being an artist. Is an advice I would give my younger self will be, I will just tell myself it will be all right. I will tell myself to be more comfortable taking chances and leaping into the unknown. I definitely will grab myself by the neck and tell myself just take your chances. Don't look for comfort. Don't try to be comfortable. That is the worst thing that you can look for. Look for a challenge. Challenge yourself to do the things you really want to do. I will definitely do that. I will tweet myself that to the past if I could. I think that the best reaction someone gave me about my work was many years back on my first group show. The work that I was doing back then, very different from this. It was a mix of, it did have a mix of abstract with some figurative stuff, but it was all charcoal and graphite and pencil work. But it was heavily driven by the abstract aspect of it. I think it was like the first time that I heard somebody interpreting something that I did that I thought I was the only one that had the answer to. I didn't have that concept. Back then, I didn't have that concept of the meaning of my work not belonging to me. I think the meaning of your work, once you're done with it, once you put it out there, is up for grabs. It's up to interpretation and not up to an individual perspective. But back then, it was the first time that this girl saw one of my pieces, and she gave me. She used. I don't remember the exact words, but I know that the description of it that she gave me felt a lot deeper and personal than the story I have made up in my head. What I want people to take away from my work, I want them to look at these pieces and feel a sense of freedom. Feel a sense, not my freedom, but their own, like that they can find something. If they can see this, look at these paintings, any one of them, and feel somewhere in their head or in their consciousness that a little door, if it's big or small, it doesn't matter. Something opened up to new possibilities for their own potential. I think I will consider that a successful painting. If it freed somebody's mind to any extent or made it freer, that would be a hit.